it's justice. But then what does justice mean to me? It means deep empathy and trust. And then what does deep empathy and trust mean to me? It means to deeply listen, to sit with, to learn, and then to love. King's moral imperative to love, I got it somewhere along the line of my deep thought into the question of the moral imperative to love. Like scales falling from my eyes, I started getting it that this is the core value, the centerpiece of what the beloved community, it's the lifeblood, it is the heartbeat. That moral is ultimately just a radical love for the other. That morality is based on my belief in the common good of others, and that I want to participate in that, and that I recognize the deep imperative to lift up the dignity and worth of every human being. So in my faith tradition, that every human being is created in the image of God, and I need to honor that. That's the moral part. The imperative is no question. There's an urgency. There's a sense of imperative. King was all about why we can't wait. And so the imperative struck me is sometime, okay, from the white community, we can have a nonchalance. We can live in sympathy. But when you get into empathy, you're literally living through the skin of another, through the pain and the struggle of another. And then to love, too, is that preposition. It has to be radically agape, radically love for the other, and to be so focused that I love you, I love my enemy, I love the oppressor, I love myself so much that I want everyone to be able to see, especially those who are the oppressor, for them to see their oppression, so that to liberate them, because that oppression oppresses them. So that the moral imperative of love, I just feel, is the lifeblood, the heartbeat, the core, and the motivation of the beloved community.
Okay, so talk a little, can you define a little clearer for us the concept of love that you're talking about? Because there are many different concepts of love. And so is this what we get from a Harlequin romance novel? Is this what we see portrayed by Hollywood in romantic comedies? So when you talk about love, what does that mean, and what does that look like?
Wow, you're asking a question for the ages, right? All the philosophers. So obviously in the Greek you have multiple. You have loves, four loves, right? You have the understanding of eros, which is an intimate love. You have a philia, which is a friendship love. You have storge, which is kind of an acquaintance, but agape love is the love that King addresses. And so to me, that love is not a sentimental love. I mean, sure, we can love the Buckeyes, the pizza. We've taken love and cheapened it, because the love that God imbues in my tradition is a love that is radically committed to the welfare of my neighbor, to the other. That love is agape, as King speaks of. It's not sentimental. It's not a Hallmark card. I mean, I think as I explore my white self, sometimes that sympathetic Hallmark expression of love for my sibling of color, that needs to be replaced by a visceral love that is embodied in the fact that I am willing to give up my own security, my own power. Even King spoke of love and power, that power without love is tyrannical. It is abusive. It is supremacy love. but power with love is the way of wanting everyone to be equitably, everyone sharing that love with each other, which is ultimately, if everyone shares that love with their neighbor, then no one is without, no one has lack. Poverty can be eradicated. uh, that's the beloved community. Racism can be erased. It can be destroyed by that love. So to me, that love, and what does it look like? It looks like a community that is always asking better questions of itself on behalf of the neighbor, on behalf of the other. And those questions, you know, is it okay for Black lives to be erased by white murderous violence? You know, is it okay with the display of white supremacy? Is it okay with that? And then we need to answer no, and then go one step further into that question. So to me, that love it's regenerative. It is something that you try like hell, and if you fail, you get back up and you try again. We're not perfect human beings, but we certainly could never, ever, ever give up on each other. So to me, that's
Okay. We on this day, as we celebrate Dr. King, and as we look at the world around us, we can't really talk about America without talking about the issue of race. This morning, in your speech, you mentioned a little bit about your experience with race. Tell us about when you first became aware of racism, and did it jar you? That question that your friend asked you. Share with us what that experience was like briefly.
right. There is a word to add to that question, is the word actively. When was the first time that I was actively aware of racism, and did it jar me? That question initially took me through my childhood, but the more that I lived in that question, it has been an active awareness over and over and over and over again as I've matured into that question. And the more that I lived in the question of my friend, is that now what is taking me even more deeply into that question from this year is obviously with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and also the images that we see on the news when you see a white riot in the Capitol, which is motivated by white, to a large degree, by white supremacy. I need to be jarred again and again and again. I need my active racial awareness so I can look back and I can see moments of evolution or emergence. Um, I don't think it cannot be a one-off. I have to take that question to the edge of my understanding and take it one step further into my discomfort and live into that. So my answer to that is, I think the first time is a daily dying and rising into that question as a white person and sitting in it alone and have it motivating me out into community.
As a white person, how do you know racism when you see it?
Anytime a brother or a sister, a sibling, is being degraded, dehumanized, when they're being murdered. But even in the day-to-day life is when anyone is experiencing the depersonalization, the dehumanization of their worth. I need to pay attention. I need to be aware. And I need to grow more deeply into the question that you're asking, is that ultimately I have got to be completely present with my neighbor, with the other. And then when I see something, say something. When I hear something, say something. And realize that I'm a work in progress. And so to me, it's living into that awareness and not ever giving up. And if I fail, then I get back up again.
You also mentioned this morning that there is a cost to love. So if we are going to love, if that is our pathway forward, it will cost us something. Talk a little bit more about that. What is love going to cost us?
I could put that question back on all of us in this room. When you love someone, how far are you willing to go for that person? And if it happens to be someone in your family or a spouse, or how about expanding that circle out, that when you love someone, how far are you willing to go? Are you willing to give up your comfort, your security, your power? And I think, can you repeat that question too, again?
What does love cost us?
I think it ultimately, if we are in love with each other, if we can truly value the worth in each other, and if we agape each other, then that cost could cost. Would we lay down our lives for another if they were in harm's way? Each of us have to ask that question for ourselves. Again, I'm answering this for me. What it costs me is the desire to be an anti-racist and to do it better and better and better. To be honest with myself, it's going to cost me to be honest. It'll cost me to be vulnerable. It'll cost me to be willing to give up my power. And I know I'm speaking this all from my white self, but also the cost in the white community is that we have got to make more and more spaces and platforms to hear Black voices, and that we have to get away, and it'll cost us, to shut up, to be quiet as a white person and just listen and sit with and sit in and weep with, and not try that in a way that sense of I'll fix it.
Sandra just put in the chat that it will cost us our old history, our old story.
Absolutely. Through this whole journey, reading Kendi's book, Stand from the Beginning, opened me up to a history that for me was whitewashed, was a history that we need. It'll cost us letting go of the history that we know to listen to the history that we need to know, that we don't know, and to be willing to be honest with ourselves. And again, ourselves as a white person, to know that there's more to my education that I have yet to learn, and to know that I don't know it all and I need to learn.
So it sounds like part of what love will cost us, it may mean some of us will have to give up our previous positions of privilege. It sounds like some practical things we will have to do is examine what the curriculum looks like in our K-12 educational system. It sounds to me like what love looks like is affordable health care for every American, a great education for every American, despite what their zip code is. So as you think back on your speech from this morning, is there something that you wanted to say that you did not say? I know that was not on the list of questions that I sent you to prime you for the conversation.
Well, I was relying on the cheat sheet. But see, that's the beauty of anti-racism work, is that we need to allow space for not knowing, and allow the question to come to us out of the blue, and to live in that and not have control of the questions. Okay. So is there something that I realized that even as I was writing this speech and combing through it, okay, where's that implicit bias? Where does my white self show up, and without me even knowing it? And the reality of naming those names and recognizing that within our community, is it Casey Goodman, right? It is, the imperative is upon us. And I guess I would want to say is, what does the beloved community sound like, feel like, taste like, smell like, in light of the violence against Black bodies, and in the reality? And then how can the white community enter into their discomfort and then enter into the conversation? How would we build a beloved community together now? This is it, because ultimately, when I was mentioning architects and builders, I had this vision that in light of the countless names of those whose stories are silenced, what about the stories that are here now with us? We can learn from the silent stories, and we can also now come into the stories of one another. And so, to answer your question, is how can we now participate in the building of a beloved community, story by story? And you mentioned it, Vaughn. How can we ask better questions of what is an equitable, what does healthcare for all look like? King was moving toward the eradication and focusing on the end of poverty, recognizing that it is poverty that can bring the white and Black community together and the brown community together to become the beloved community. Let's look at education. How can we educate our children and us as adults? Can we give platform to our young Black voices and include white voices together? And so, I'm processing that question out loud, because I'll tell you what, I wrote 80 pages for this over 10 months. I said yes to the speech because I felt, one, honored, but I also felt called to go deeper into my racism and to become a better anti-racist, to be and so this is a part of it. Want to talk about discomfort? Yeah, I'm out of my comfort zone. But doggone it, all of us on this call, we could answer that question of what the beloved community looks like and feels like, and making sure everyone has the equal opportunity to education, to healthcare, to jobs, to you name it. So that is maybe a patchwork quilt answer, but I'll leave it at that. What does a beloved community look like now, tomorrow, and in these days ahead? Every crisis has an opportunity woven into it. And I believe King's dream, it's up to us to birth it for the next generation.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing with us this morning and sharing more with us this evening. When the committee initially met to discuss what would be the theme for the 2021 breakfast, if you can think about all of this took place in February of 2020. We were trying to plan for where we are today. So you can only imagine how much the world has changed and how different the world is today than it was when we initially got together and started having a conversation about what would a good theme be for our 2021 MLK celebration. We chose the theme of the moral imperative to love because we truly believe that if Dr. King were here today, he would remind us of what he has already said, that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. We truly believe that Dr. King would say to us that the pathway forward is paved with love. That we have many options, but that's the only viable option because we cannot return hate for hate. So we cannot legislate our way out of the current climate, out of the current situation that we're in right now. Love is the only pathway forward, and we must do that together. So with that in mind, what we would like to spend some time, the rest of our time together this evening looking at is, okay, we'll have 2 breakout sessions. In the first breakout session, we'll talk about what can I do? Because that's one of the questions that we get asked most often is what can I do to help? What can I do to make things different? And then we'll also look at, in a second group, we will look at, okay, what am I willing to do? So we'll talk about some things I can do together. Then we'll talk about, okay, what will I do? Our goal is by the time we're finished here this evening, you'll identify some things that you can do, and you will identify at least one thing that you will do when we end our time together this evening. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Misha that will give us some direction and some instructions for our small group gathering together.
Thank you, Vaughn. And thank you, Vaughn, and thank you, Father Joe, for leading us into that and having us think a little bit deeper about what it means to have that moral imperative to love and what does love mean and how can we make it more visceral. So we're actually, like Vaughn said, would love for you all to engage in this. This is a conversation and we can't do this work without your your thoughts and your perspectives. And so we're going to start off by putting you in our first breakout session. You'll be broken up into small groups. And once you get in your group, we want you to first introduce yourself. You can say your name, and if you want to say like your organization that you work with, or maybe your favorite pet that you have, whatever you feel comfortable sharing about yourself. But we love for you to share who you are, and if you can change the tag in your Zoom. If it's not your name or the name you want people to call you by, please make sure you change that before you get into your group. Also, a couple of things before you start talking about what you can do, just a couple of touchstone things to keep in mind to make sure that we're creating this space. Even though it's a virtual space, we want to make sure it's a space where people feel they can be authentic, and also, you know, have a space where you're attentively listening to other people. So a couple of things that we ask that you all consider when you're talking with one another. First thing, only speak in first person. You can only speak for yourself. You can only speak about your experiences and your perspective. So we ask that you don't project any language that projects onto other people, but only speak from your being. I think this is something we all learned in grade school, but be respectful. Make sure that when someone's speaking that you're giving them that space to do so. Even if you disagree or have a different opinion, making sure that you're giving that space. Also, it's okay for silence. Sometimes, I mean, as Father Joe said, this is a continuous work in progress. No one has all the answers. We're always constantly on that verge of what have I not learned yet, or what am I still learning? So sometimes we need time to process that, and some of us need to just be silent with ourselves. So it's okay if your group wants to share that space of silence. It's not a bad thing. And then the last bit is listening. When it's someone speaking, really try to make sure that you're really listening to what they're saying. Try to shut out that part of your brain that wants to put in your bias, what they're saying. Try to fully be present and be with them. So I'll go ahead and let Matt go ahead and separate you all. Oh, I didn't mention this, sorry. But we're gonna focus on what can you do. And I think a good starting point, I know a lot of people try to think big, which is great, but sometimes thinking small. So think about what opportunities are already in your community that are there, what resources are already available that you can promote and talk about. What is a need that you see in your community? Vaughn mentioned education. You can start there. Where are some groups already in Westerville that are doing some of this work to make it a more equitable space for all people in America? So we want you guys to think through that. If you have someone who wants to be your note taker, to write down and record some of your ideas of things that you can do, and then we'll share that back with the larger group. I'll give, if anyone has a question, you can raise your hand, and if there's no questions, we'll go ahead and jump in. You're all there. All right, well, welcome back. Hopefully you got to know some new people in your small group, and hopefully you got to have a little bit interesting conversation about what are some things that you can start with in terms of looking for resources or organizations within your community, and how you can start making that active steps to, you know, doing the moral imperative to love. So I would love to get someone to speak for their group and share with us a little bit about what were some things that you listed or talked about as possible resources that, or maybe not resources if you didn't get there, but a starting point. We would love to hear what you all talked about. You can raise your hand. I see, okay. Marlene?
I'll start by just giving you a quick overview of what our group talked about. We talked a lot about educating yourself, reading a lot. People mentioned some specific books: Caste, Waking Up White, Just Mercy, White Fragility, and Surrender White People were the books that were mentioned. We talked about the importance of active listening, and one good point that was made was we have to get more comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. And I thought that was really important. Active listening, and to participate in events like this. I mentioned that Church of the Messiah has a monthly forum, and we tackle hot button issues whenever possible. And the last one was with the Westerville police chief, just to try to get more of an understanding of how policemen are selected and how they're trained and things like that. So there are a lot of ways to approach the issue. And I think the consensus was that we need to learn more from each other and listen carefully. So I don't know if somebody from our group wants to add anything to that, but that's what I took out of it.
Thank you, Marlene. I think that's great. Yeah, does anyone else from the group who was in the same group with Marlene have anything they want to add? I think, yes, I think a lot of these things that you mentioned, I think, books are always a great starting point, just because they give a lot more detailed information. There are a lot of like book clubs. There's a lot of, different avenues you can go in when you're using literature. So thank you for sharing. Anyone else from a different group want to talk about, your process? John?
Let me unmute. Several things were mentioned. One member of the group said just learning more, like Marlene's group did. For myself, the book Waking Up White was a significant understanding point for me. Before that, I thought I was kind of neutral and didn't realize, I have my own ethnic values, that come into play that, so that was a crucial thing. Another group member said, I was quoting from someone, she said, I don't model it very well, but she said, someone mentioned the key thing is you have to get proximate. Now it's a challenge for all of us. And one of the things I mentioned is I try to be sensitive and inclusive in my own neighborhood. For example, when George Floyd thing happened, the people of color in my neighborhood, I made a point of, as I would by chance would come in contact with them, of expressing, how deeply sorry I was that happened, and it turned into some really meaningful conversations. One of the members of our group, it's his job to encourage others to be engaged. So that was an interesting perspective. So he shared about a number of the different initiatives at Otterbein with students, helping them become engaged in social justice and facilitating understanding and other things at the university. One thing that was mentioned was helping other ethnic groups really fully participate in the economic system. For example, supporting ethnic businesses. What are ways we can encourage even entrepreneurship? So those were just some of the things that we talked about.
Thank you, John. I think those are great. And again, yeah, I think getting approximate, building that proximity, it makes you have to confront, that question that Father Joe brought up about just, when was that first moment for you that jarred you when it comes to racism? A lot of times we can block that off because we're not around people who maybe experienced that specific, impact of racism in that way. So broadening your circle and building those communications and building that relationship with people forces you to have to address it. So thank you, John, for sharing. I would love to hear one other group if someone wants to share. Amy?
I was the note taker for my group, and we had some of the same points that the other groups brought in. But one nice thing that was brought up was Colleen phrased it as, what communities do I run in? And taking a good look at ourselves and thinking about who am I with, and it really ended up being about, you know, family, friends, colleagues, you know, but understanding the community that you're in and who do I run with and what are those opportunities. And so we talked about that and about even you know, expanding those opportunities and saying things to people that we love as well as new friends, choosing our words about um, you know, what group am I in, and just saying some bold things that may open up conversation without pressuring someone else to say something, but it would create opportunity to speak. And you know, we talked about the fact that all of us in our group could have been telling other people about this event, and whether or not we did and why we didn't. You know, was there something that I felt, you know, that held me back from advertising or saying it, you know, just inviting a couple people. And so we talked about, was it's there, you know, is there something in our background that caused us to be silent, even though it was important for us to be present? So we set a goal for the next event, or, you know, our next opportunity, that whether or not someone chooses to attend, but we would offer to 5 people. You know, we would say out loud to 5 people what event was available or something we were going to participate in.
That's great, Amy. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that's a great segue. I don't know if that was intended or not into our next breakout session. So thank you, Amy, for that. Yes, I think Amy and her group, the fact that you made a goal is what we would like to encourage each of you to do with your groups. Now that you've talked about resources and you talked about books and you talked about ways and things and organizations that are doing a lot of this work that we're wanting to get better at and learn more about so that we can build those meaningful relationships, now we want to help you make an action plan. So in your session or in your breakout group, we're going to give you 10 minutes. I was told to give you a time so that you know how long you can talk. And if you talk too much, Matt will creep and send you a message. So in your breakout session, we want you to focus on what will you do. And as Amy mentioned, her group has already made that decision of, okay, the next MLK legacy conversation, we're going to promote it to this many people. That's the kind of tangible goal that we would like you to do with your group. So think about, you know, going a little bit deeper about what you all said. If there's a book that you all really like, okay, I'm going to buy this book. I'm going to reserve this book from the library, from our Westerville library friends. And we're going to read this book. I'm going to join this book club on this date. What are some active and tangible goals that you can make? So we're going to go ahead and split you up again. If I forgot anything, Vaughn, Matt, no. Okay. We're going to let you guys go back in your groups.
Put it in, you know, put it in your group too, to say, what does a beloved community look like, sound like? You know, maybe also interjecting that. How can you participate in that? What are you going to do about it? You know?
Yeah, it's wonderful. Have fun. Good luck. Not good luck. You're going to do great.
Perfect. We'll see you. 10 minutes. I added those questions, Father Joe, to the chat for everyone.
Oh. And then there were 4. I think this is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do too.
it's starting the conversation. I guess the key is, how do you fan the flames? How do we collectively invite people into the rest of the year, especially after the inauguration and all the fallout from the violence?
They have more than 10 minutes. They have it until 8.
Oh, did I read it wrong? The thing on mine says.
It said it's 8:05 to 8:15 is the setup. The breakout rooms go to
Oh, mine's is.
You did so well in the setup that you gave them more time.
In a little bit, I can add, some groups ask for a little bit more time. And then I can just say, we'll go 5 minutes longer or something.
I'm sorry. I was like, oh, 8:15.
Vaughn,
You're gonna blame those people.
Vaughn,
That's how it happened.
maybe we do host something since we're gonna flip to win-win. Maybe we do something in a month and a half and use that as the first big push for the April 22nd conversation.
something towards, the end of February, beginning of March. I'm really thinking that would be an excellent session to ask James to facilitate for us.
What if instead of having breakouts, he talks, we put it on mute, I could share and put like reflective music, depending what direction he goes, that gives them individual reflection time. Maybe we provide some sort of like resource to jot down something, and then he brings them back to like another part, and then there's no small group, but it's simply hearing James, being empowered with what to do, and then there's that individual time. Or do you think go into like small groups? You look very upset by what I just shared.
No, there's another conversation taking place.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to prescribe for him what the session looks like.
Yeah.
I want to ask James if he would be willing to facilitate that kind of a training and allow him to dictate what the session looks like.
Yeah. Wonder, do you think make that in the evening, or do you think we try and hit some business people too and do it during like a lunch?
Evening.
For
this topic, for what we're looking at.
Yeah.
It's a perfect follow-up to what we're doing right now.
But you can, yeah, I agree. But I wonder, creating, what are all the other arenas that you can start a conversation? When you mentioned the business community, you can do a business luncheon for business leaders, to talk about how, for them to look at what are their hiring practices? How are they, so I wonder if you look at all the arenas, the city council with the city leaders and the police, and then religious leaders. I mean, so, how do you adapt the conversation to, so I'm kind of expanding it down the road, because I know you're focusing the immediate piece.
Sapna on our board is an HR consultant. She could be a phenomenal person if we hosted something for the business community through leadership.
Well, part of the conversation you and I had, I shared with you my idea in that arena, is for business leaders and members of the business community to utilize a lunch and learn kind of format.
Yeah.
So when we come back, sorry, I'm bringing us, but we can go back to the future stuff. When we come back and then we debrief like what some of the group said, Father Joe or Vaughn, did you want to do like a bring it back all in type of thing, or do you just want me to say thank you and end it?
Yeah, I can say something. I don't know what that is exactly, but I'll say something.
If you say something, I've got a quote from King. Where do we go from here? Which ends,
I'll just, after the debrief, I'll say, Father Joe, take it away.
Say, well, Vaughn can take it away, and then maybe I can, because as president of the MLK Legacy, I don't have any qualms. I don't have to say anything. I do have a, because it is our choice between chaos or community. I mean, that's how all this started, right? Where do we go from here? Vaughn started the conversation last year.
So you can do the debrief piece. I don't know that I have to say anything. So you could do the debriefing piece and kick it to Matt. And then Matt, if you could, as the Executive Director of Leadership Westerville, thank everybody for being here and participating. And we really hope that everybody has a tangible takeaway from their time spent here this evening. And if you could let them know about what's coming next. And let's leave them with what's coming next, which is
Certainly.
That's
the
good.
long title that Margaret came up with for the.
Yeah, actually, let me pull that up because I'm going to stumble my way through that. What time did you say? 8:15, Misha. So should I say 5 more minutes? We'll come back at 8:20.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
25.
And you know, something else we could do that we didn't do is a Q&A.
Oh yeah, so we can call him back now.
Yeah. Do you wanna just end at the time she said so we can cover a Q&A, a recap, and what's to come?
Well, if we do that, I hadn't thought that all the way through. So if we do that, how are we gonna take questions?
It's in the chat.
They
Raise
can
the hand.
they can do the chat, or I'm sorry, Misha, I didn't mean to speak over you.
Oh no, go ahead.
I can watch the chat and go to the second screen if Misha, you want to look at the first screen, and I'll just leave my mic on and say I have someone over here. Because you know how there's 2 tiers of people?
Yeah.
I bet you when you bring them back, because of the power of the question that they've been talking about, and we end at 8:30, then I think that whole time would be them sharing more deeply.
Yeah, let's
Because it's 8:14. I could cancel give them the 60-second rundown now, and then they're back at 8:15.
bring them back at 8:20. Misha do the debrief,
Okay.
and then you close out and point to what comes next.
All right, cool. We were asked to give a little longer.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, you guys do good work together.
We just do whatever Vaughn says.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do whatever you all tell me to do.
Use the voice of reason.
We follow the Jesus hierarchy where we are just the disciples. We just
Not just as disciples. We are all one. But at this particular time.
I won't tell you what happened to Jesus' initial disciples, but that's another story.
Do that for the next talk.
For the next talk.
Okay. All right. So hopefully we can get some of the other people from the other groups. I don't know how many groups there were total.
Oh, I can tell you that. 7.
7.
Let me
So I'll just say, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, but I could say like, if
7.
someone from a group who didn't speak in the first one, if you could speak this time.
Or
Just leave it. Okay.
just
I'm just thinking about my
because if they
my classroom experiences.
if they don't speak out the first time, I mean that it could have been a group of introverts because we don't know them. We just threw them together.
But you can lay out the hopes that whatever you came up with in your group, that you're going to take it into the week and the months ahead, and and activate it or live into it or however they want.
And if there's time left, throw in a little teaching. So there are some things, some key concepts that we think everybody should be mindful of. Number one, everybody has a part to play. Number two, everybody's part is important. Number three, one person's part is not more important than another person's part.
I'm gonna mix all that up. You're asking me to say that.
I see the wheels turning too, Misha. You're gonna be like,
I was like,
my part's
okay.
more important than your
My
part.
part, your part.
But yeah, I'm just thinking filler. So if they come back and they're not talkative, that could be some nice filler.
Oh no, they'll be talkative. There's at least 3 professors in that group that I know for a fact are talkative. So I could just call on them.
Yeah, they'll put together a curriculum within seconds. A teaching.
So, did you guys hear about the? I shouldn't laugh at this, but the truck that overturned on 270 full of vapor rub. Did you hear about that on the news? Amazingly enough, there was no congestion for 8 hours. Right. Here's the other one. When I was on the phone with Misha, I was getting caught up on my dad joke rip-away calendar.
Yeah.
Here's the other dad joke that I didn't have time to read while I was on the phone with you.
Oh, it's a new one.
I just pulled this out, but this is for today. So this is, if you don't like this one, this is the dad joke, not me. I'm reading a horror story in Braille. Something bad is going to happen. I can feel it.
I like the Vaseline one more.
It's hard though. It was easy for me to not laugh when I was on the phone with you, but then in front of you all, I'm just like, I can't not laugh. All right, I'm going to give them the 1 minute warning. Vaughn, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Someone on here goes, Matt, random question. Are you the guy that teaches spin at LA Fitness? So there's someone on here that knows me as the guy that yells at people way too early in the morning.
You shouldn't confirm. You should just let it be mysterious.
I should be like, I don't know. Am I?
Well, that gives it away.
Unless he wants to sign up for the class.
If you need me to be, I will.
Right.
I like this countdown. I just wish Zoom allowed you to put in as the host how long the breakout is, and they could do it on its own. But I've not found that, I don't know, attribute or whatever.
Yeah.
I gotta learn these Zoom tricks of the trade.
Scott.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
You're muted.
You're
Hi,
muted.
Scott.
Joseph, Juan, great to see you, Matt.
Hello.
Thanks
Good
for
to see you
hosting.
too.
Coming back. All right. Well, welcome back. We hope that you all had a good round 2 of discussions about your action plans. We're so excited. This is a new year. This is that time of year where we make resolutions. So you've made some resolutions that will make some really good changes in the communities that you all serve. So I would love to hear if anyone wants to share on behalf of their group, or multiple people can share from one group. It's not just one person, but if you can share some of the things you discussed. What goals have you set? What are some actionable steps that you guys are planning to do to get on that step to bringing more moral imperative to love?
Desmond on the second page has his hand up.
Hey, everyone. First of all, I just want to say thank y'all for coming today for these discussions. I've really been hearing a lot, just getting a good sense of the education and just where everyone's at. And the different views. One of our discussion points, and I'm sorry, I'm out on the road. I'm on 9%. If my computer died, just know that I love you, love you, love you all. And I didn't hang up all of a sudden. But just to say, um, one person discussed something very beautiful, and it was the fact that they said throughout their life, they didn't really look at people in a sense of a race standpoint. They looked at people simply just for them as human beings. And but they also expressed that with the Black Lives Matter movement and really just a lot of what's been going on with race relations within our time, it sort of shook their perception, and now they are more aware of race, and they sort of viewed it as a detriment. And I understand that point. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and I just expressed with them that I think that that is our ideal community. We want the ideal community to be that we just judge people off of the content of their character, not their skin. It's what Martin Luther King wanted. However, we can't have that unless we shake the perceptions where some are blessed with the opportunity of being able to live life of just judge of not seeing race, whereas me and a lot of minorities, we cannot live life without seeing other people as race, because I realized within myself early in that moment, I did not realize I was Black until someone else made me feel Black, in the sense when someone else expressed prejudice, racism, and injustice. I see it on the news. I see it within my family. I see it within my friends. Therefore, if we do not remove the color blindness sort of views of how we look at around the world, we cannot get to our ideal world. Race still exists and it will exist forever. However, we can work to a more ideal community where race is just a descriptor, not just the totality of one individual person. But I think that in itself was a nice goal for everyone to keep on having these conversations, keep on doing what we're doing, and you can keep adding to your goal, but just know that what we're doing right now, it's great because people are understanding stuff. We are shaking people's perceptions, and when we continue to do that, that's where change happens. Change is not stagnant, it is forever continuing and going. It's a part of Buddhism in a sense. It's impermanence. Nothing lasts forever.
Wonderfully said, Desmond. Thank you so much. Yes, and I'm glad that that intention was felt in this. That's the point of these conversations, is to help you build the intention of seeing people and hearing people, and then moving based on those things that you hear, so we can get to that space where that race part is just your descriptor, and maybe it will get to one place where it's not even a thing anymore. So thank you for sharing that, Desmond. I would love to hear at least one more person before we wrap it up. Anyone else want to share some goals or actionable steps that your group discussed? Any book club plan dates started? Yeah, Amy.
We just added on to the beloved community and trying to think about what that meant to us. And we tightened up our goal of saying, you know, we were worried about who would we offer to and who would accept it and those sort of things. But we decided, that our offer would be made without judgment of what the other was going to think or not think, and that our goal would be to create access and make something available. So that we kind of just tightened that up. And then with the beloved community, we talked about how do we develop a beloved community that accepts others as they are. We accept ourselves and we accept others as they are, and move to conversation and learning together. How do our beloved community, we would be able to speak without hesitation, and we would feel comfortable enough to learn and also deal with our own anger and frustrations and worries and fears. So that would be, not that the beloved community would be ideal and perfect, but that it would take our existing emotions and we'd have a community where we could learn what we would do with them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. I love hearing. Yeah, I think grace is essential in these type of conversations. Again, this is a learning process. So expanding that grace to everyone, expanding grace to yourself when you realize you didn't know something is really crucial. I want to, because of time, I think we're going to go ahead and shift to our closing comments, but I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this time with each other and having these conversations with each other. We're really hoping that you will take what you've discussed and really start practicing it each day. Don't overwhelm yourself with trying to do these big goals. Start small, expand your circle, expand the people who you talk to, and then it'll feel more imperative for you to do that work. So I'll let Matt go ahead and shift us off into our farewell.
Yes, thank you everyone for attending this evening. Thanks to all of you who were with us this morning. A special thanks to Father Joe for leading us this evening and for being our keynote this morning. I'm going to keep going with the thank yous because I just feel so much appreciation and love from everyone that was with us today for both events. But I especially want to thank Pastor Von Bell for being our fearless leader of the committee for 14 of the 16 years that we have had a Westerville Martin Luther King Day celebration. And to Misha, Tatiana, to Laura, to James, and Stephanie, I think, who's on my second screen, and I hope, and Linda, who are all of our MLK Legacy Project committee members that are here, and I hope I didn't miss anyone. We want to invite you on April 22nd to join us for our next community conversation. It's actually going to be a really insightful one led by a professor at Otterbein, Dr. Margaret Kohler. We're calling this one the history of the win-win in Central Ohio, the district lines, desegregation, and common areas. It's going to be April 22nd. It is going to be virtual, and we currently have a Facebook event page live off of Leadership Westerville. And then on my to-do list tomorrow, post these events today, is to create a registration page so we can collect your emails and I can send you out the links on April 22nd. The committee already has 2 other community conversations in the works for later this year, and we have a lot more planned. Vaughn, even in our 2 breakouts, was assigning us with more tasks and conversations we're going to host. So hopefully you'll stay in touch with us and continue this conversation with us well into April and the remainder of the year. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you again, Father Joe, Vaughn, and Misha, for leading us this evening. Have a good evening.
Thanks so much, team. This was great.